naive question. You do that, really.
No, I mean, it's the kind of thing where... yeah, but
I don't think so, Johnny.
Can I just say that when we set the show up and we first got the gig 2 years ago, this was one of the very first things that I was determined to do, was put you guys together. So we are really, really pleased that both of you and your kind of mad lives have managed to actually make it time to join us. Yeah.
We took
So
our
it's
first
good magic.
selfie. We had our first
we
selfie.
did. And the crazy bit is we have been friends now for 23 years, and as far as I know, there's one photo of us together, which gets rolled out every time that somebody needs something. This one photo of us taken in Minneapolis in 1996. It's rolled out. So finally,
can we find out how you guys met? What happened?
It was Rance Housley's fault.
It was? It was?
Well, I can tell you from my story, which is I was at the 1991 San Diego Comic Convention, and I was doing a signing, and back then I would have 11 or possibly 12 people in my signing room. And there was a very nice guy called Rance Housley, who was in the line, and when he got to the front, I signed his whatever it was, and he said, I've got something for you. And he gave me a tape, and a cassette tape. And he said, this is from my friend Tori. She's a singer-songwriter, and she sings about you on one of the songs, Please Don't Sue Her. And I took it home with me. I didn't play it or anything at the thing. Took it home, and it wasn't even the first one of the cassettes that I'd been given that I played. I remember the first one that I played was sort of Scandinavian harmonium death metal. It was like, oh Lord Morpheus, come down. There was, yeah. People used to give me, especially at San Diego Comic Con, give me cassettes.
Their interpretations is
and it was mostly really bad. and then
so your stories might have been something like that.
I had no idea. I'd never been given anything that was good. And I put Tori's in.
There's an archive of these somewhere. We should read them.
Actually, many of them magically became blank cassettes. Were reused for other more.
Reused them, yes.
But Tori's, it wasn't Little Earthquakes. It was about half of the songs on Little Earthquakes and half of the things that wound up being B-sides in the Little Earthquakes days. But I put it on, and one song in, I was completely blown away. I did that thing where you keep driving because you don't want the music to end. And there was an address in the thing, and it was a London address, which I thought was a bit weird because I thought she was American. And I sent some comics and a note off just saying, I think you're wonderful. And then a few days later, I opened it up. Actually, I think I wanted to find out what the songs were called, because there was no information about song titles, and to see if there was more information. And I realized there was a phone number. So I dialed the phone number, and Tori answered, and I said, I'm just listening to your music, and you're wonderful. And who are you? And so, and she did sing about me. There was this line about me and Neil hanging out with the Dream King, which I love the fact that we were hanging out before we'd ever met.
We were hanging out because Rance was how do we talk about Rance? He's wonderful. He was an art student, and he needed a place to stay. He had dated a gal that I used to babysit. This is how crazy connections are. And they had fallen out, but he and I stayed friends. He was like a little brother. I'm Neil's big sister, and Rance was like a little brother. And what happened was I let him stay at the flat in, it was behind a church in Hollywood, and I would stay with my boyfriend so that he could place to stay. And he was obsessed with metal music and comics. And there were comics all over. I would come into this place, and there's comics everywhere, the wooden tops, all kinds of music playing, and I thought, oh my goodness, he's taken over the flat. I don't know what's happening here. And I would just start, as an older sister does, you just start perusing. What is he into? And so I started reading. What was I reading? The Doll's House? No.
Yeah, would have been Joel's house back then. And I think it was may have been Calliope was the one that I think was the first one he gave you.
Did you immediately feel that rapport with his work? Because you know, we're showing a couple of slides which are completely random, but okay, there we are. This is a good one to start on, because that is mythology, which is something they have a lot in common with, and actually, strangely enough, that is the Egyptian goddess Sekhmet, who you have felt quite close to and you've referred to. And you are really interested in the Egyptian goddess Bastet, who is in...
Sekhmet turns up in Ocean at the End of the Lane as well.
Of course, yeah. And so there are these parallels in your work. Did you immediately feel that rapport with what he was doing in his comics?
Well, because he had mythology through it. Again, it's the only comic book I'd ever read. So the first one I read just included a world that I was interested in.
What I thought was interesting about that, though, was lots of people discovered Sandman back then. And it almost didn't occur to them that anybody was making this thing. It was just a comic. And what I loved was me and Neil hanging out with the Dream King. It was like going, okay, there's somebody writing this, and and Neil says hi, by the way. And we didn't even know each other. And now I get to write Neil says hi, by the way, on Tori fans' things. Oh, you must have been such good friends. It's like, no, that came later. But having said that, it was absolutely immediate. I mean, I remember we talking on the phone, we would talk for hours. And then I went up to see you play at the Canal Brasserie.
Oh my God. Remember that. It was somebody's birthday.
It was the owner's birthday, and you had to play Happy Birthday to You in the middle.
But in the middle of Crucify. And you came, and they brought the Melody Maker, somebody, there was a journalist.
The gig existed, if I remember correctly, you explained it to me, because the gig only existed because Melody Maker had to see you do something to write about it. So your publicist had arranged this thing where the only two people in that space to see you were me and the guy from Melody Maker. He invited me, and she was sitting with the guy from Melody Maker. I came in and you waved at me, which I thought was quite impressive because you didn't know what I looked like. But I figured I must have looked like me. And then we went off and you acted out the Silent All These Years video.
Did I?
You were going to be shooting it the next morning, and so you acted out the entire thing on the tube station platform. And you were going, and then I'm this little girl under a box.
Tash is cringing right now because she's told you cannot act out things at the train station.
Tash, who do you think you get it from? No, you were doing the full thing, and I think we were definitely friends from that moment. And I introduced you to Dave McKean, who did that wonderful little cover.
But what was happening as we would exchange? We would just start talking and then busking, and then sharing stories. So Neil is a great talker. He's a good listener too, wonderful listener. But he would talk about mythology, and that was really exciting because we would, I don't even know what we talked about half the time, but it would last for hours and hours and hours.
It would last for hours and hours, and we would build things.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of Sandman, and Sandman in weird ways came out of being friends with you. The more or less, I don't even think I've ever told you this, pretty much the entire second half structure of Sandman was figured out during your gig. It was down in Houston somewhere. It was your first proper big gig. Was it Shaw Theatre? Yeah, the Shaw Theatre.
Did I play the Shaw Theatre?
You did. It was your first big London gig, and I just remember sitting there while you were playing and just going, oh, I know how this works. And it was a sudden figuring out that, okay, I'm going to have Lucifer playing piano in his nightclub, and I'm going to have, and this will happen. And it was like I had all the pieces in place, and I had the overall shape of Sandman, but by the end of that gig, I knew exactly how the Kindly Ones was going to work.
That's funny you say that, because that's how mediums cross, I think.
Yeah.
So there are times I'll be reading something of his, even now, I mean all the time, but back then as well, where I'll be reading something, some story, and all of a sudden you start hearing combinations of melodic combinations or rhythms, and it might only be a word or a phrase at a time. And of course I'm looking at the pictures, but I'm hearing it's the story. And then the muses come and visit you, because see, it's strange how, I mean, we've talked about this a long time. We both believe in the muses, and we express it in different ways. But Calliope was a great story about the muses, and the idea that if you don't acknowledge the muses and honor the muses, then they stop coming to you. And yet how they come sometimes is very much, you go to other mediums, so it makes sense that I don't always go to music to get music. You go to different places. I go to dance quite a bit, the painters, a lot of the artists, but it's the storytelling, and mythology is a big place where story would come through.
You never want to get your inspiration from people doing the thing that you're doing. That's not where you get your inspiration. It's like the thing that I was talking about, the fact that with the other comics writers, we didn't talk comics. We talked everything else.
Otherwise it becomes a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy, as you've said. It just
Exactly.
feeds on itself.
It feeds on itself. And
They can inspire you.
Absolutely.
They can push you.
And you can look at something and go, oh, I didn't realize you could do that. I can do, if you can do that, then I'm going to do something even cooler. Or did I try?
No, that's right. That's right.
Which is really fun. But you know, things, if I wanted to point at things that inspired Sandman, things like Sandman #6, the Diner Story, 24 Hours, came out of going and seeing Peter Greenaway film Drowning by Numbers, which has gone on to become one of my favorite films, and was pretty much one of my favorite films from then. But just going, oh, I didn't realize you could structure something like this. He just structures it, counting 1 to 100, and when it reaches 100, you're done. And then I thought, well, I wonder if you can count your way through a comic. I've got 24 pages, what could I do in 24 pages? Well, I could do 24 hours. I could do 1 hour per page. And then that entire conceit fell apart, because I thought, well, I can't actually. I need like 5 or 6 pages just to set up everything in the first hour, so I'm going to have to go half pages later on. But it was that idea of going beat for beat for beat through 24 hours inexorably, because I had 24 pages that took me into it. And it's not something that I would ever have got from a comic. It was something that you get from going outside. And Tori and I think, we do inspire each other. I come away from conversations with her inspired. I come away from her music inspired.